Morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
I have a question for you. Do you want to be in my YouTube video? I want to do like a YouTube video where like I ask you questions that people are too afraid to ask their therapist.
Okay.
You want to be on?
Sure.
Yes. So this is going to be 20 questions that you're too afraid to ask a therapist. Good morning, friends and family of YouTube. I'm gonna get some breakfast. You're so cute.
You're silly.
Ooh, but this is delicious though.
Enjoy.
3, 2.
Just gonna
Thank you, baby. Hi, mommy.
Hey, Wes.
Thank you so much for being in the car with me, having this kind of conversation. I'm gonna ask you 20 questions, 20 juicy questions to ask a therapist, which
20.
is you. I try to split these questions up into like 3 different categories. One is kind of like the soft questions, softball questions. Secondly, are like kind of like the warmer kind of questions, a little more intense. And then the last group is like hot, deep, red hot seat questions. If you have not seen these questions yet, can you confirm for the camera?
I have confirmed that I have not seen them.
All right, so let's begin. First question is, what is therapy?
A place for people to go to speak about what troubles them in a non-judgmental type of way.
How do you know that you need to go to therapy?
A lot of people want to think that therapy is for those who have a mental health disorder, or AKA, as some people like to call it, that they're crazy. But that's not it at all. Therapy is for those who are just simply struggling with everyday life issues, whether they're just having difficulties in a relationship, difficulties communicating with their parents, having a hard time on the job, and just they struggle with how to resolve those kinds of challenges.
That's a good point. And my next question for you is, how do you actually find a therapist?
To find a good therapist nowadays is quite easy. With the social media and the internet, you can simply go to so many different websites, and some of those websites you can even like a buffet.
Yes.
Indicate what do you want. You either want a male therapist, a female therapist, a therapist of color, a therapist that practices certain forms of therapy, someone that has a religious background, anything that you look for that's important to you, you can pretty much find that.
Are there like any specific websites people can go to? Like,
Yeah, well, the one I refer to most is Psychology Today.
And I'll put that in the bio in the description. My next question is, how long does one stay in therapy for?
And there is no minimum time, or there's no actual length of time as well. You may find that some people go into therapy and after a few sessions they find that, okay, I think I'm good now, only to find out that they need to come back to therapy maybe a few months later, a year later. Some people stay in therapy for a couple of months and then they are good to go. Some stay in it for years. You know, it all matters what kind of challenges you're dealing with. As long as a person feels that they still need it, they can continue.
Now, is therapy expensive? Like, is it pricey, and how does one like afford it?
Well, fortunately, our society now understands the importance of mental health. It is equal to physical health. So insurances cover mental health therapy as much as they cover any kind of physical ailments. So if you have whatever co-payments you have for your office visits to see a doctor, it's the same for mental health services.
Now, this might be like a red hot seat question. What does someone do if they can't afford therapy?
Someone can pay out of pocket for their sessions. And we as therapists, we have our hourly fees. But if someone cannot really afford what our standard fees are, there is a sliding scale that we as therapists do offer as well. We do offer a cost that people can afford.
Oh, Well, thank you for answering our first round of questions. That was round one. That was the first round of questions. The second round is a little more intense. Well, I guess a little more intense. So the first question I have is like the question I always get, like how does one know that they have anxiety or they have a mental health disorder?
When you find that something interferes with your daily living, then that's a condition, that's a disorder to say, or that just indicates that something has gone awry, and you cannot function on a daily basis.
And then for speaking of seeking help, what if we have a friend or a family member, like a relative, that we think should go to therapy, right? And we want to tell them to go to therapy, but they don't want to really listen. Like, how do you best support that person?
Well, it is difficult to say to someone, you need therapy.
Yes.
Because they might take that as an insult. A more gentle way to approach that is to say to someone that, you know, hey, I've noticed that you've been struggling lately. You've been bringing up the same kind of issues with me that I cannot seem to help you. Maybe it's time that you seek the help from someone that's more, how can I put this? Is better trained to handle the challenges that you're going.
What can people say to you that only stays between you and the client versus when you have to report it to someone else?
All therapists, they outline at the very beginning of the sessions that there is the confidentiality law, which that says everything that says here remains here between the client and the therapist, except when there is any element of harm associated with that. Meaning you are going to hurt yourself, someone is hurting you, or you're going to hurt someone. Then the therapist is obligated by law to say and share that information with someone.
What do we do if our parents don't necessarily believe in mental health? How do we go about getting help?
You mean as a minor?
As a minor, because most of my audience members are younger. I would say most of the students I talk to every day in high schools and middle schools, they're younger. So what do you do if your parents don't believe in mental health challenges?
Yeah, and that happens a lot, whether it's a cultural situation where certain cultures don't believe in the benefits of therapy. And seeing that a minor, they do have to go through their parents in order to have the insurance company pay for the therapy sessions. I would say to a minor that, you know, if you're a student in school, speak to your school counselor. Your school counselor can help speak to your parents and hopefully bridge that gap between the need for therapy and the parents' discomfort.
Oh, yes. Now, what do I do if I go to a therapist and it doesn't work? It's not working. What do I do?
Not all therapists is going to be the right fit for you. So if you do go to a therapist and you just feel that there's no connection there, you don't have to worry about hurting that therapist's feeling, because if you don't have that connection with your therapist, again, it will just be a waste of your time and also waste the therapist's time. So if you don't feel you're making progress with the therapist, just let them know that this isn't working, and then you can always... And
then how do you break up with your therapist? I've heard that phrase before. How do you break up with your therapist?
That's hard. It is hard because, again, you don't want to hurt the therapist's feelings. But I've had clients break up with me where they have said, you know, I feel stuck. I feel like I'm not getting anywhere. And oftentimes that's really in the therapist's ball court to say, yeah, I feel like, you know, we're not making much progress either. Why don't you, let's see if we can find you another therapist. So that way it becomes the onus on the therapist to say, let's have this person move on. So yeah, a good way to break up with your therapist is by saying, I feel stuck. I don't feel like I'm making progress.
How does one get out of a depressive episode? Does therapy help, or is there another thing that could help? Any tools or tricks you can throw on to the audience?
I say that my main thing is when a client goes and sees a therapist and the therapist gives you all these tools to use. the client then has to put those tools into practice, because it's no magic pill. You know, once you leave that therapist's office with those tools, you have to take it from there and use those tools, whether it's the breathing techniques that the therapist has taught you, whether it's those cognitive behavioral skills, being able to identify the patterns of negative thinking. You have to be the one to use the tools, because if you don't use the tools, you're not going to find yourself getting better.
Now, what if therapy isn't working? What other thing? I know you mentioned the tools, but maybe you can dig in more into that toolbox. Like you mentioned intentional breathing. You mentioned, you know, trying to do certain other things, but what other things can help with if someone's having a mental health struggle? Sometimes
medication is also helpful. In some cases of depression or some mood disorder, a combination of talk therapy, what is it that makes you sad and depressed, is best combined with medication.
And that leads to my next question, which starts round 3 of the hard questions, where it's really like on the spot, heated, intense questions. What are your thoughts on medication? As you know, this can be a very controversial topic.
So my thoughts on medication is that there are times when a combination and with medication and talk therapy is the best course of treatment, but I'm not one to ever force medication on someone. There are times when clients really are against medication, and we just continue with the talk therapy. But if they've tried practicing using the tools that's given to them, and then they still don't see any changes, then hopefully that might convince them that medication probably should be something that they turn to.
So what is the best piece of advice you can give to maybe like a younger person out there who wants to talk to their parents about mental health and anxiety? How do they begin that conversation?
I say get another adult on their side, like their school counselor. Mental health disorder, there are those who need some psychoeducation around it, you know, to help them understand mental health issues more clearly. So if a child can't convince their parents, because oftentimes parents feel like they know more than the child knows, I would say the child could reach out to others in their lives, whether it's a big sister, their basketball coach, or their school counselor. Get another adult to really help them educate their parents.
Now, the last three questions we have are more personal to me and you. So I have a question. I have 3 questions. 1, how did you feel when I started to see a therapist back when I think I was 12 or 13? And then have your feelings changed? What are your thoughts?
Well, I don't think there's any parent out there that when they find out that their own child is having their mental health challenges, the parent is going to feel guilty that they weren't aware of it, and that they somehow feel like they failed their child. And those were my initial feelings, especially for me as a person, mental health professional. I felt like, how could I have not seen this in my own child? But once I got past that, I just was more focused on what my child needs. So I believe I was the one that encouraged you to seek therapy, because I could not play that double role of mother and therapist at the same time. So you seeing a therapist, it was what was needed, and I'm glad that there was something and someone out there that could help you.
And I agree, because my mom was the one that encouraged me to go start seeing a therapist. She told me about the Psychology Today, the website, where I was able to find the therapist I was working with, but then she shut down her practice. But yes, you have been a major part of my support system, and I'm thankful for you. And then my second to last question, it's kind of a general one. Do you like being a therapist? And what was it like?
I do enjoy helping others. You know, I feel like it's what I was made to do,
Yeah.
once you find your sense of purpose.
Yes.
So yes, I do enjoy that.
Oh, and speaking of the therapy as in a general topic, do you think everyone should go to therapy, or everyone should try therapy, or give therapy a try?
Definitely. I think anyone that's struggling with their daily challenges, therapy works.
Yes.
So I think, and it's available,
Mm-hmm.
so by all means, and it's so easy to access. It's affordable.
Mm-hmm.
You can find a therapist in your areas with social media
Yes.
and the internet.
Yes.
Now that we do, a lot of therapists are doing telehealth.
Yes.
Where you no longer have to drive to a therapist's office.
Right.
You can sit in the comfort of your living room or wherever part of your home which is private, and you can see a therapist there. So it's so easily accessible and affordable. I don't understand why anyone who's having any kind of personal challenges would not turn to a therapist, because that's what therapists will do. They will help you with your life challenges.
And I think to that point, the stigma is what holds people back so much from getting therapy. Because I think going to a therapist is still seen as that thing that crazy people do, which is why conversations like these need to be more normalized.
Right.
And I'm so thankful that you are part of this conversation.
Right,
but
absolutely.
that was my last question.
Oh, wonderful.
That was it. Thank
great.
you so much for being part of this conversation.
Those are some very good questions.
Thank
you
you
for having me on.
Thank you. See, wasn't that bad?
No, it wasn't bad at all.
See, oh my god. Stay tuned for more. That was an amazing mental health conversation about therapy. I'm so thankful that my mom was able to help me record that video. I'm going to attach those mental health resources that I've mentioned in the interview during the conversation in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, definitely hit that like and subscribe button for more mental health content. I want to turn this wonderful community into a supportive space, because at the end of the day, if no one has ever told you, you are enough. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.